All right, we're going to start a new segment on the channel called Dave's Garage. We're going to do different things, working on bikes, maintenance, things like that. So what are we doing today? We're going to be working on a 2022 Triumph Speed Twin. What are we doing? Well, we're going to take out the charcoal EVAP canister. That's that ugly box that's up in there, clean it out, maybe improve airflow. We're not going to save more than a pound of weight, so it's really not much about that. I'm just of a philosophy of if shit doesn't need to be there, get rid of it, clean it up, make it maybe a little more aesthetically pleasing, and if it gets a little more airflow because there's not obstructions and things blocking that up, you know, can't hurt. So what are we going to do to get it out? We need to take off side covers because I think there's some screws we're going to need to get to over here, up under here, that mount it to the airbox, and then it should be able to pop up and out. And then you're going to need some needle-nose pliers to remove the hoses. We'll have to determine afterwards. I'll have to fire the bike up. Some bikes have a vacuum line, so as vapors expand when gas evaporates in the tank, flow into that charcoal box, charcoal absorbs it. Then when you fire the bike up, sometimes there is always a line back. Sometimes it's under vacuum, sometimes it's not. I know Aprilia and Ducati use a vacuum line off the intake manifold to suck the vapors back into the intake track so that it gets burned off. I don't know if this one does or not. So we'll pull it off and then we'll check. If it does pull a vacuum on one of those hoses, then you need to put a screw or something in there. As far as tools go, some needle-nose pliers to reach in and pull stuff off. Those panels pop off easily. Then we're going to need one of these, and I think it's that size or that size. So don't know what those are. Let's see. Well, it's probably written on here somewhere. So it'll probably either be a 3 or a 4 millimeter. And as far as popping these things off, just kind of pop them off carefully. You don't want to break those tabs, but those are just held in place. And do yourself a favor. Don't lay them down on the ground like that because they'll get scratched. Put them up somewhere where you also won't step on them. Ask me how I know. I'm sure everybody's probably done that once before. Okay. Put that up there. And so now the hoses connect over here, right down there. You also want some zip ties to zip tie them out of the way when we're done. So those two hoses are right there. So I should be able to take needle-nose pliers and reach in and pop them off. There's no, usually you just got to twist them just a little bit to break any of that initial friction, and then grab them and pop it off. So for now, we're going to put these out here until I determine if those need to be capped off. If they don't need to be capped off and they're made to vent, so one of these is a vent line. If they both go up to the tank instead of to the intake track, then I would just leave them down there to drain. What I would also do, and this is something Paul up at NPR Ducati taught me, was if it's not something that has to be capped, take a razor blade and make a slit this way, lengthwise, so there is a gap. What that does is if the tank, air expands, then when the tank cools off, it wants to contract. You don't want it to get plugged because mud daubers, which if you're outside the States, that's a type of wasp, they love to find little things like this, and they'll build a little mud nest and plant an egg in there. And so a lot of times you're like, oh, what's that dirt doing in there? How did dirt get up in there? It's a freaking mud dauber nest. And so they'll build a little nest in there and clog it up, and then you're pulling a vacuum on you, because as the fuel comes out of your tank, that fuel has to be displaced by air. So the air can come in and displace that. At some point, there's been cases where tanks, you'll see them start to kind of come in, or you open up the tank and it's like whoosh as air rushes in. So that's what you'll want to do. This goes to right here. So that must be a one-way pair valve type of thing. So just snaps in, we'll see. On the Aprilias, when we did this mod, you'd remove that because that thing was prone to fail and then it would cause issues. So I have a feeling that this is, I don't know, we'll figure it out. But in any case, let's get rid of the box first. So we've got that disconnected. There's a push pin that goes through there. So I think what we'll have to do is come over here. And did I grab the right one? Goddamn right I did. So let's loosen that, take that out. Now someone told me on the Triumph that when they did this, like, yeah, I just removed the things and just left the hoses there. And that may be fine for this bike. I just don't know. I'm assuming that there's a vacuum line only because it was on other bikes. But on some of those bikes, there was actually like 3 lines. So one came in, one drained to the ground, one was returned. And the one that returned was a vacuum line. If I'm remembering right, it was a few years ago. Okay, so let's get that screw out. And okay, that looks like it's going to just fall right out. Those screws look like they're going, those screw holes look like they're going straight into the airbox. I can see through into the airbox. So technically it's below the filter, so it would just be sucking in air that would then get filtered, so it wouldn't be a problem. I'm going to take those out. I'm going to put the screws back in just to seal it. Okay, that was easy. That weighs about 1.5 pounds, almost 2 pounds. So, okay, we cleaned that up, got that space cleared up. It might get better airflow. I don't know. I just don't want it there if it doesn't need to be there. So we'll put these screws back in. Now let's go over to the hoses here. Let's see if we can determine which one's which. So if there's a return line, that one I believe, I mean, it's got fittings in there. Let's just fire it up and see if it idles funny and see if there's any vacuum being pulled. Let's see. Okay, doesn't appear to be any vacuum even when I revved it up a little bit. So what I will do is, I don't want to plug them because, again, if pressure builds up, you want it to be able to push out. And I think there's another one anyway, but just to be safe, I'll double check all of this stuff. But this conforms to what someone else who did the mod told me. They're like, no, you don't have to on this bike. So what I'm going to do is just put a little slit here in the hoses just in case the ends ever got plugged up, and then just tuck them down there, and I'll just zip tie it to the rest of them just to keep it from going in here. Not that it could go anywhere, but just keep it from flopping around and keep this unobstructed. So yeah, that's the mod. Okay, that was easier than I thought. So we need to put a zip tie on that bundle of hoses right there, loosely. You don't want to pinch them off. Put the cover back on. We're going to come back over here. We're going to put those 2 screws to plug those 2 little holes right there and put that cover back on. And that's it for the mod. That's it, really. So that's a pretty simple mod you can do here at Dave's Garage. The next mods that are coming are going to be the suspension setup on Saturday up at GMD CompuTrack. We'll do a little ride and vlogging on the way there, and then a riding review in the mountains after that with some of my peeps. And then the next mod on this bike is likely going to be replacing, going to leave the stock headers with the crossover tubes. We're going to remove that X-pop, that box underneath, and this piece right here. So it'll be an X-pipe collector with no cat. This pipe it used to be just the X-pipe rather, underneath. But now, you take this cover off, you'll see that this mid pipe is welded to that X pipe underneath. So we got to either do the whole headers all the way back, or you have to leave the headers, but where they plug into the X pipe and get the X pipe out, and then the X pipe, the new ones, have this piece welded on. So this all comes out and it'll look stock, but it'll drop more weight from the bike. It'll drop a lot less heat from the bike because that cat gets stupid hot. That's how cats work, is they get incredibly hot. And all that heat right under the motor, we can get rid of that, make the motor run a little cooler, let it run a little freer, a little less restrictions. And then we're going to go get a full dyno tune. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put these screws back in while I'm talking here. But there's other things you'd like to see on the channel. So now that I'm getting my garage set up, at some point we're going to get a tire machine and some other things in here. But we're going to try to make this more, DIY, bike maintenance, all that kind of stuff. So you'll be able to tune in and, here's how you change the battery. Here's how you clean the air filter or replace the air filter with a high flow filter. Here's how we do an exhaust install. All that kind of stuff. If we get to some point where I'm changing fork oil or, doing things like that, how do you drop the forks? How do you service the forks? We're going to try and make the channel educational. We'll try to learn you something while entertaining. All right, those screws are in there and tight. We can go ahead and put this back on. Gently push it in. If it wants to fight you, doesn't want to go in, just spit on it. You know the drill. All right, let's go back over here. And first we're going to put the little slits in the hoses so that if they ever get clogged on the ends, we don't run into an issue. So carefully. And that's all you got to do. That way, if for some reason the pressure builds up, it'll push past that little slit. Or if there's a vacuum situation where there shouldn't be, because this is clogged and it's trying to suck air in that it needs to displace the gas that's coming out, it can suck that little bit of air. It doesn't need to be a high flow, just enough to prevent either pressure buildup or vacuum buildup. I don't know if vacuums technically build up, but you know what I mean. You want it to be able to equalize the pressure if it needs to. So put those in there, get everything where it wants to be. Take a zip tie, and let's just, this is probably the hardest part of the whole damn thing, is getting the zip tie in there where I can grab the damn thing. And technically this is probably isn't absolutely necessary, but I just like to button everything up nice. Damn it. Yeah, this will be the hardest part of the whole damn task, is me getting. Let's try it this way. There we go. And like I said, when you put this in here, you don't want to cinch it up tight. You just want to keep it from flopping around. That's it. You don't want to pinch anything off. So get that. Okay, let's go get our cover. Put that back on. There we go. All right, everything's back up. Nothing's sticking out. We got the box removed, saved a pound and a half of weight, cleaned that up, and so yeah, we are done. Let's see, is there anything else? No, I don't think so. So that's our mods for today. Looks clean, looks good. We'll get some more stuff coming in the future, but that's all we got for today. It's the only thing I can think of to do today until I get the suspension done and get the exhaust parts in. I will be doing a sprocket swap on this because I went up to a 190/55 profile tire to give better turn in. That has the effect of raising the gearing slightly, about 1 tooth worth on the rear sprocket. So I'm going up 1 tooth on the rear sprocket to lower the gearing back down to where it's back to stock. I mean, it's hard to tell with that much power if you actually lose acceleration, but on paper you do. Right now it's geared to do 214 miles an hour. It's not going to do that, so I'd rather lower the gearing just a little bit and get more acceleration and drive. Not that it needs it, but whatever. The other thing is by doing that, I'm going to have to move the back wheel a little bit more forward because the bigger sprocket's going to take up more chain slack. And so reducing the little bit of wheelbase, you know, might improve the handling and turning. So we'll have that coming over to the sprocket. That should be here Friday or Saturday. So I'll get that done hopefully this weekend. We'll do a video on that. We'll have the ride review and the suspension setup video coming. So this will usher in a new era of Dave's Garage. Trying to do it nice. Can't wait till we get a lift in here. That'll be amazing. Save me a lower back pain of always having to crouch over and do stuff. Be able to just put it on, hook it up to my air compressor, and just hit a pedal and whoop, lift it up. So anyway, there you go. There's the first installment of Dave's Garage.